Tony Dungy, football analyst for Football Night in America. Good morning, Tony.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well. Tony, when did you know that Christian Ponder was not going to play?
I really didn't know for sure until, they actually had him go out there and throw Saturday afternoon before the game. But I knew there was a good chance. Leslie Frazier told me they were going to try to, wait as long as they could, wait until that 90-minute deadline, see if he could throw, but the chances weren't great. They had practiced with Joe Webb, and I think they were very confident.
For some people that don't know about that injury, how debilitating was it bursitis in the elbow for a quarterback?
Well, it can happen. I actually played quarterback in college, had the same thing happen to me as a sophomore in college, woke up after a game and just couldn't throw, and you can't generate that power, and there's really not a whole lot you can do. And I know it really had to make Christian Ponder just feel so bad, opportunity to start your first playoff game and not be able to go, but it could happen. We saw that with Robert Griffin yesterday. It's just unfortunate, but that's NFL football.
Is a coach's job in that situation to push him to play, or do you let him make that decision?
No, you have to let the doctors make the decision, and then you have to decide what's best for your team. And you're trying to weigh everything, and obviously to have your starting quarterback in there, the guy who's gotten all the reps, the guy who has done all the playing time, that's going to be the best thing if he can function. But there comes a time Leslie Frazier didn't think he could function well, didn't think he was going to be effective, and I know Christian wanted to play, but it just wasn't in the cards.
Talking to Tony Dungy, football analyst, Football Night in America, here on the Dan Patrick Show. Tony, halftime, Robert Griffin III clearly is not healthy for the Washington Redskins. If you were coaching that team, would you have pulled him?
Well, you have to look and see what he can do and how effective he can be. And you look at the second quarter, after the second touchdown pass, he clearly wasn't the same. But you feel like maybe he's going to have that spark. Maybe he's going to get it back. At halftime, I'm sure Mike Shanahan sat down with his coaches, and you always have that thought, this guy is magic. He can make something happen. I'm going to give him every opportunity. But at some point, you have to look at it and say, you know what, he's just not able to perform and not able to do the things. When is the time when the backup quarterback actually gives us a better chance to win?
Is that a long yes or a long no?
Well, to me, you probably do. You ride it out. I mean, you've seen this guy come through, but to me, the bigger question was you got to talk to the doctors. Is this guy healthy? Can he go out there and perform? And to me, I would have let it rest on the doctors. And that's where a little bit of the cloudiness is right now. You're hearing some things from Dr. Andrews about the previous situation. That to me is more than anything. With a coach and giving a guy, a competitor, a chance to play, you're probably always going to do that. But at some point, the doctor has to step in and say it's not wise.
Yeah, you've only got 20 minutes or so in that locker room at halftime. When if you're Mike Shannon in that position, is your responsibility to winning the game for the team, or is it to Robert Griffin and his health?
Well, it's both, and you're always going to rely on the doctors for the health. And the player is always going to say he's going to play unless he's just totally, can't function. And you heard Robert after the game. I'm the starter. I gave us the best chance to win. I felt like I could do it. But there comes a time when the doctor says, you know what, he can't move. He's not mobile. He's going to be at risk. And more than that, he can't be effective. And that's what we saw as it went forward, that he just wasn't effective. He wasn't throwing the way that he normally had, and the kind of extra thing that he gives you, that mobility, he wasn't frightening the Seahawks now, and they could defend their team a totally different way.
One of the things we saw among the teams that won, Tony, the Baltimore Ravens, they seem to get a pretty big boost out of Ray Lewis being back in the lineup. How influential for a team is it when a guy like Ray Lewis comes back? And did you see something different out of Baltimore with him back?
Oh, you certainly do. We had the same thing in 2006. We're struggling on defense coming down the stretch in the regular season. Bob Sanders came back in the playoffs, and we're a completely different defense. Now, certainly physically, Bob was a small percentage of that, but psychologically, mentally, he helps everybody else play better. And that's what Ray Lewis does for them. You could see the energy. You could feel the energy. And it was a big, big difference yesterday. Now, they're going to have to take that on the road and duplicate that same thing. That's not as easy to do.
Yeah, you look at the four teams that won over the weekend, Tony. Which team do you think has the best chance of advancing in the next round?
Well, I think the NFC teams do. I think they're going to be great games. Seattle has that strong defense. Russell Wilson just gives them a confidence. And, you've got Atlanta, who's the number one seed, knowing they're a good football team, but they've had this stigma of not being able to win their first playoff game. So I think that's going to be a great game. San Francisco, Green Bay. San Francisco beat them in Green Bay early in the season, but Green Bay is a different team now, and they had a little bit of the same thing with Charles Woodson coming back and energizing their defense. So I think those are going to be great games. The AFC, I think the visitors are going to struggle to win. You got Denver and New England, who have great quarterbacking. They've got kind of a tradition of home field advantage. Bill Belichick with 2 weeks to prepare. He doesn't lose very often. And, you've got Houston who won at home and didn't play great and still has some question marks. They've got to go up and mentally feel like they can do something different and somehow stem the tide. Baltimore lost at home to Denver. Their thing will be, hey, we've got Ray Lewis back. We're a different defense. But they've got to travel. I think those AFC games, I think it's going to be tough for the visitors.
See, Tony, I've got a text message here from Dan Patrick who told me to ask you, which of the 5 open jobs have you been contacted about, and which ones are you going to take? Not my fault, Tony, not my fault.
I know. Dan always wants to know what's going on. I've talked to some people, really not talked about a job per se for me. I've had a couple of people ask and see if I'd be remotely interested. They've been third parties. So I can honestly answer that and say I haven't been contacted about any of the jobs directly.
Not a single one?
Not a single one directly from the owner or the GM who's making the decision, just from interested parties.
Indirectly, how many?
Indirectly, a couple of them.
A couple of. And your level of interest is?
Is zero.
Zero. Chip Kelly has the circus, the roundabout he's been on. Now it seems like he's staying at Oregon. You were one of the people, I believe, who said that you thought he was going to go to the NFL. How surprised are you that he's going to the NFL, and do you think he made the right decision?
Well, I actually talked to Chip late last night, and he's trying to decide what to do at that point. And I think he's making the right decision because I think he feels strongly about the job that he has. And he is fired up about going back to Oregon. And when he investigated everything, and what people don't understand about Chip is that's the way he thinks. And he said after the games he was going to listen. I think that's what he did. And he decided that his best job or the job that was most comfortable for him was right there at Oregon. So I am a little surprised, frankly, but I'm happy about it and look forward to the Ducks having a few more good seasons. So
Chip Kelly told you he was going to stay?
No, he did not. When I talked to him, he said he was still thinking about it. He had narrowed it down to one team, and he was either going to go to that team or he was going to stay. But I could tell from the questions that he had and the way that he was talking that it really was going to be difficult to leave Oregon, and it was going to have to be what he considered the perfect job. And I think at the end of the day, he just analyzed everything and said, you know what, the job I have is better than the jobs I was considering.
Is he happy in Oregon on a personal level? I mean, obviously the job is a good job, but is he happy living in Oregon and his family in Oregon?
Yes, that part of it I can speak for. I know him. I've talked to him about that. He, recruited my son, and he was telling me the benefits of being in Eugene and what a great place it is. And we live out there part of the year, and it is phenomenal, and I know he is happy that way. You always want the challenge of the next level, and can I do it at the highest level? And I think that does intrigue Chip. But he's a different guy. He marches to a different drummer, so I don't think you can think for him or think about what's going on in his mind. He enjoys it there. They've got a great program. They've got there's a lot of positives in his life right now. So I think at the end of the day, he thought about all those things and said, I'm in the best place for me right now.
So as we sit here right now, Tony, 9:30 in the morning, do you have any doubt that Chip Kelly is staying at Oregon?
Well, I haven't talked to him, but if he said he's going to stay at Oregon, I think he's staying. And I felt like when I talked to him, that's the way he was leaning last night.
Thank you, Tony.
All right.
That's Tony Dungy, football analyst, Football Night in America for NBC.